My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He has trampled out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Hello, hello. Happy Friday. How are you guys? I'm doing okay. This stream is a really intense, somber stream today. Kind of hard to. Hopefully, I'll get through it okay. It's pretty truth bomb filled. Just put it that way, okay? It's pretty truth bomb filled. It's very relative. It's interesting how much things are coinciding with right now too. But if you didn't know, my name is Deanna. I'm streaming out of Humboldt County, about Humboldt County, to Humboldt County, and anyone else who cares. And I'm also going through this study. I'm usually on at 12:30. Today I'm late, and I'm very sorry for that. But I'm here, and believe it or not, I've actually pre-read this. And I have all the answers written down already, like a teacher's edition. Oh, snap. But I'm not really teaching this class. I have to make sure I mention that. I am learning right along. So just taking this time, setting it aside for me to learn and to turn on my camera, and hopefully someone else is learning too. And I have a couple friends who are learning. So thank you guys who are taking the time to hang out with me for this study. It's definitely not as boring as I thought it was going to be. It's very cool. This is the coolest thing on the internet right now. Okay. Let's make it the coolest thing on the internet right now, just to learn. Not this in general, but to learn and to want to know our laws and to want to know how they were formed and what they were thinking and what was going on and what's going on now. Well, you know what's going on now? A lot of the same stuff was going on then is going on now. And we're going to hear about it. And it's really heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. My apologies, sincerely. I am late. It's true. I'm late, but I'm here. I am here. And guess what? I've got the answers too. So I'm super stoked. I got the answers. I've already done the study. I was doing this at 10 o'clock. I was doing this 2 hours ago. I can't believe I'm late. I can't believe it happened to me. I had technical difficulties. Oh, and guess what? One of the pictures that we're going to be is upside down, and I couldn't get it right. So there's that too today. But we're going to get right into it. And look, at 3 minutes is pretty good for me. 3 minutes, and we're going to get into it. Let's see. Let me share my screen so you can follow along if you don't have your own copies. Whew, I got a pass from the teacher. I got a thumbs up. Good. So that's my friend who recommended this study. He told me it was a better study, one of the better studies out there. I'm not going to compare it to anymore because I know he's working hard on some other things, but we'll just say this one doesn't focus on the government much at all. It's more about our Constitution, and it allows us to think for ourselves, which is awesome. It's not telling us, doesn't seem like things that are very irrefutable. A lot of facts, a lot of backing. So we'll go to the standuphumble.news is where the study is, under the Constitution. And so, let's see, did we upload? Yeah, because we got new questions. I divided this one up. This one was like questions 7 through 21. And I'm so glad I had the time to actually do some pre-reading this morning. Hi, Jerry Lee. Good to see you, honey. Because this is really intense. And this is really hard to swallow, this kind of stuff that was going on, and what the things Washington had to go through, the way our people died, fighting for our freedoms, and then compared to what we're doing today for them, to preserve them, and to hold back this government that let them down then, it let them down now, it's going to keep letting us down. We are going to have the government we want, the government we're engaged in. That's what we'll have. So we're on questions 7, and we're back to the making of America. Wait a minute. We're back to the Making of America book, and we're getting into right away number 7. How did American and British forces meet at Brandywine? Who won? And so I have the answers, but I got some things underlined. Oh, and also I forgot to take the pictures of these blank pages before I marked them up with my highlighter. So that's a mistake I made today too. And there's your upside down picture. Sorry about that. I tried to turn it around, and I was already running late, and so that was some of the stuff I was dealing with. And I should start to get this up earlier, but I also have time management issues. I know my weaknesses, and I work on them. Okay, so we're on 87. So pages 87, we're going to get one of these up with the questions and one of them up with the the pages, including your upside down page that you get to have. Okay, so Brandywine's really on the next page, but I really wanted you to see that page and maybe read it and hear more about that useless General Howe. Brandywine. So here we go. And I'm going to read it on my paper, my page. Here. Although subsequently outnumbered, Washington set out to head off the British invasion. The two forces collided at Brandywine Creek on September 11th, but the battle did not go well for Americans. Bad intelligence information and the task of maneuvering troops on a battlefield which stretched over several miles left the Americans confused and disorganized. By nightfall, they were making a forced retreat northward. So that is that first question. And we'll go back to the other questions. 8. Explain how more... Oh, and who won? You can tell it was Britain won that one, because Americans were forced in retreat. 8. Explain how more experienced officers and better reconnaissance might have ended the war at Germantown. Page 89 is Germantown. We'll go right to there. Let me double check I'm showing. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The bus go round and round. Who we thrown under the bus today? Who we thrown under the bus? Germantown. Washington saw the camps at Germantown as a perfect opportunity to attack. And then what I have here is, unfortunately, his troops have been compelled to reach their target, compelled to march 16 miles in order to reach their target, but they were tough. The initial attack pushed the British back, and a potential victory was at Washington's fingertips. However, a major segment of the American army became lost and arrived an hour late. Another became enveloped in a fog. Finally, a charge by the British sent the Americans reeling back in unorganized confusion. With more experienced officers and a better reconnaissance of the terrain, Washington might have pulled it off and ended the war. Question number 9. Describe the misery endured by the American troops at Valley Forge during the winter of 1777. Page 90. Oh, there's your upside down page, sorry. This is your upside down page, so listen carefully. Unless you can read upside down well, which you might be able to. The tragedy at Valley Forge was political rather than climatic. The weather was freezing but moderate compared to some winters. The real problem was there was no power in Congress to compel the states to fulfill their assessments. As a result, men froze and starved because of a weak government and selfish avarice by many Americans not directly involved in the actual fury of the war. As one historian writes, soldiers at Valley Forge went hungry because nearby farmers preferred to sell to the British in Philadelphia for hard cash because New York's grain surplus was diverted to New England civilians and the British in New York City, and because Connecticut farmers refused to sell beef cattle at ceiling prices imposed by the state. Soldiers went half naked because merchants in Boston would not move government clothing off their shelves at anything less than profits ranging from 1,000 to 1,800%. Everywhere in America there was a spirit of profiteering and a habit of graft that made Washington grind his teeth in helpless fury. Let me repeat that. Everywhere in America there was a spirit of profiteering and a habit of grift. Let me replace graft with grift that made me grind my teeth in helpless fury. Congress passed the buck by authorizing him to command our supplies. This he was reluctant to do among a people supposed to be trying to throw off the yoke of a tyrant. When he was forced to do it, the results confirmed his fears. Each year, thousands of modern Americans visit the site of the suffering of Washington's beleaguered soldiers during that miserable, deadly winter of 1777 to 1778. Many men suffered to the point where they could not endure it. They joined the British just to get food. About 3,000 deserted and went home. Around 2,000 froze to death or died of starvation and disease. Some 200 officers resigned their commission. The inhumanity of it all is portrayed in the following summary. And so every night, for too many weeks, stick-like soldiers stuck their heads out of their smoky huts to cry, "No meat! No meat!" Fire cake and water was their food, bloody footprints in the snow their sign. Their clothes were so ragged, their blankets were so scarce, they often sat up all night rather than fall asleep and freeze to death. Although they had little sustenance themselves, body lice managed to feed on them. Lafayette was horrified to see soldiers whose legs had frozen black and who had been carted off to hospitals that were little better than death terminals to have their limbs amputated. One bitter Continental wrote, "Poor food, hard lodging, cold weather, fatigue, nasty clothes, nasty cookery, vomit half my time, smoked out my senses. The devil's in it. I can't endure it. Why are we sent here to starve and freeze?" We're going to get into the next question, I think, here. No, we're still to read that. We're still reading on this. There were only two bright spots in the whole miserable winter at Valley Forge. One was the news that the French had signed up as allies and would be sending over ships and soldiers. The other was the arrival of Lieutenant General Baron von Steuben, former aide to the King of Prussia. Von Steuben was horrified with the conditions at Valley Forge. He said no European army would have endured it. He set about whipping the freezing, starving scarecrows into a respectable army. He cursed, cajoled, and joked the despairing Americans into a more positive outlook as he drilled them day after day. In due time it was discovered that he was not really a baron, but the French Minister of War had recognized his abilities and endowed him with this counterfeit nobility in order to make him more quickly acceptable to Americans. However, by the time the facts became known, people could not have cared less, especially the troops at Valley Forge. The jolly Prussian potentate had become a military institution, and the men obeyed his commands out of admiration and respect rather than fear. Oh, good. We get to turn on the next page. Uh-oh. Yeah, there we are. Spring came at last, and by the time the snow was melting off the hills, Washington had put together an army that could march and maneuver in spite of the Congress, the desertions, the deaths, and the terrible sufferings at Valley Forge. Midwinter, it looked as though there might not be any American army left to join the French when they arrived, but by April, Washington knew the crisis had passed, and he still had a chance. He was also cheered by the exchange of prisoners, which allowed the captured General Charles Lee to return to his position as second in command. What Washington did not know, and the private papers of General Howe did not disclose for half a century, was the fact that Lee had spent his time in captivity plotting with Howe on ways and means of betraying Washington into British hands. And let me see if we're on the next question or not. What great opportunity did Washington see as the British troops left Philadelphia? Tell how the traitorous acts of Charles Lee at Monmouth prevented an early end to the war. So we're getting into that now here. A shockwave went up and down the American states in May of 1778 when it was learned that both General William Howe and Admiral Richard Howe were resigning their commands in America, although the admiral would not leave until September. Sir Henry Clinton, who took over the British command, promptly ordered the evacuation of Philadelphia. A large French fleet was on the way to America, and Clinton wanted the British forces concentrated in New York by the time the French arrived. The terrified Tories in Philadelphia suddenly saw the pomp and pageantry of a brilliant winter turning to ashes in the spring. Howe brushed off their complaints with the casual suggestion that they must somehow make peace with the patriots with whom they had so snobbishly mistreated during the British occupation. So the British packed off with gear, guns, and baggage for New York. But this was more than Washington could endure. Militarily speaking, here was the core of the British forces stretched out along the road for a dozen miles, virtually asking for an attack. Washington ordered his half-field army out of quarters and led his troops across New Jersey in hot pursuit. The Battle of Monmouth. When Washington got up with the rear guard of the British near Monmouth, he held a council of war. To his amazement, General Charles Lee argued vehemently against attacking the British. Washington overruled him, but tried to placate Lee's feelings by offering him the command of the advance corps that would strike Clinton's first. Lee refused the assignment until he saw the honor would go to young Lafayette and that he would have a command of 5,000 men. Upon learning this, Lee told Washington he had changed his mind. Nevertheless, Lee's attack was an unorganized disaster. That's your answer. As Washington came up along the road with the main body of the American army, he suddenly ran into waves of fleeing American soldiers in full retreat. Washington's blood pressure rose with his wrath. Washington ordered Lee to the rear and then set about to stop the retreat. He was the only one who could have done it. Washington had a magnificent presence among his troops and supreme calmness under fire. He galloped down the road towards Monmouth, halted two retreating regiments, reformed them, and ordered them to hold back the attacking British until he could regroup the forces to the rear. Now Washington was able to see the fruits of von Steuben's winter work in action. He saw his American regiments wheeling into line under fire and forcing the British back. This battle could have been a great victory, but tragically, Lee's initial mistakes in both strategy and execution destroyed the cutting edge of the attack, so the element of surprise was lost, and the darkness found both armies exhausted and the outcome undecided. Sir Henry Clinton and his British officers only waited until midnight. Then they quietly aroused their troops and stole away in the darkness to safety. Washington knew he had just lost a magnificent opportunity to end the whole conflict, and he blamed Lee. So there is your answer. What event in 1777 complicated Britain's efforts to make war on the United States? Wait, did I? Oh, I forgot 11. 11. What dastardly technique did the British War Office engage in on the American frontier? Who was sent to deal with these terrorist operations? 95. The answer is they mobilized the Indians and they introduced terrorism. They introduced terrorism on people. And so we're going to read a little bit about that here. Let's see. Where's it go? 2 years of terrorism. Yeah, that's the next page. Okay. Wait, I'm on the wrong page. Where's page 94? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, you guys. Shoot. Where's page 94? Oh. That's not it. That's not it. I might not have it for you, but clearly I have some editing to do. All right, you don't get this page, so you just have to listen carefully. I'll go back to the question so you can see the question. It's question 11. What is this dastardly technique? It was 2 years of terrorism is the answer. In early 1778, the British War Office began to carve out for itself a huge black mark in history as it allowed Sir John Butler to mobilize the Indians and lead them forth on terrifying raids against the American frontier. We read, on July 4th, to mock American independence, and I'm sorry you don't have this page. Let me fake it out here. Let's fake it out here. Let's put one there. I lost my page. To mock American independence, Colonel Sir John Butler struck at the Wyoming Valley in western Pennsylvania. Hundreds perished. Men were burnt at the stake or thrown on beds of coals and held down with pitchforks, while their horrified families were forced to witness their torment. Others were placed in a circle while a half-breed squaw called Queen Esther danced, chanting around them to chop off their heads. Soon the entire frontier was in flames. Since Congress did nothing to quench the Indian massacres, they began to spread through the Ohio Valley and Northwest Territory. Finally, Patrick Henry, who had become governor of Virginia, commissioned a 25-year-old frontiersman, George Rogers Clark, to lead a company of around 175 men in the region and wipe out the British outposts. So that really is the answer, but this is a really horrible story, too, what happened in all of this. And I will have to get this page up for you, because this is how they eventually dealt with them, but it's a couple pages long. So, and we answered the question, and I'd rather get on a page. You have the page too. 12. What event in 1779 complicated Britain's efforts to make war on the United States? I know. Spain declared war on Britain. In June 16th, 1779. That's what happened. Do we not have that page? Because it's on page 95. Yep, we don't have that page. But that's what happened. Okay, trust me. Okay, this is the last question. Describe the virtual abandonment of Washington by leaders of the Confederation while American forces suffered at Morristown. This was worse than Valley Forge, which I did not know. So hopefully you will have this page. Should have this page. And we're going to read a lot of it here. Before that, when the Battle of Savannah was fought on October 3rd, the French-American losses were 850 dead and wounded against the British casualties, only 150. The French fleet loaded up its survivors and sailed away. The whole affair left Washington sick at heart. It was a waste. From the British standpoint, however, this unexpected triumph in Georgia gave them the elixir of victory they needed. Blah, blah, blah. Washington, meanwhile, was bitterly disappointed that the French admirals would not help him liberate New York. They were just sailing their ships up and down and just like just sailing up and down and not doing anything. As winter came on, he had no alternative but to head for the hills and go into winter quarters at Morristown, New Jersey, for the second time. His stay in Morristown had been completely miserable in 1778, but it was nothing compared to the wretched conditions he suffered there in the winter months of 1779 to 80. Congress had been shuffling about the country like a band of refugees, and its influence over the various states was rarely rated barely above zero. Furthermore, its order to Washington to live off the country was an insult. Every one of the Middle and New England states was prospering. So was Virginia and much of the South. Washington's virtual abandonment by the leaders of the Confederation was sorely aggravated by the arrival of one of the worst winters anyone could remember. Even the New York harbor froze over, and howling blizzards swept down on the American winter quarters. The wind blew their pitiful, ragged tents away, and both officers and men often awaked from the fitful sleep to find themselves buried in deep drifts of snow. Some of the soldiers had neither tents nor blankets, and many died while struggling with bare feet and no coats to build rude huts. The specter of continuous starvation hovered over the camps. Washington wrote that we have never experienced like extremity at any period of the war. Another day, he wrote, we have not at all this day 1 ounce of meat, fresh or salt, in the magazine. The tragedy of it all was that while Americans starved and died at Morristown, other Americans in the surrounding states waxed fat and prosperous. When Washington could endure it no longer, he literally raided the countryside for supplies. The people were given receipts or virtually worthless continental dollars for their confiscated goods, but this failed to diminish the feelings of hatred and contempt which these measures generated towards the army that was fighting for their freedom. Alexander Hamilton, Washington's aide, wrote, we begin to hate the country for its neglect of us. The country begins to hate us for our oppression of them. The casualties and suffering at Morristown during the winter of 1779 to 1780 were worse than those at Valley Forge. It would be hard to convince any man in the camp, except perhaps Washington, that victory and peace were barely 18 months away. That was all I could take. So, I'm glad it's Friday. I'm going to digest all of this stuff. Hey, Eric, good to see you. And, Debs, Frog, hey, y'all. Good to see you. That's a tough lesson to hear for me. To hear, because it makes me feel like, yeah, I know how that feels, being out there during COVID and even now afterwards. These people in Humboldt County think we're just gonna go on as normal, like, these people still wearing your mask, still taking your jabs, still getting tested, and you don't know what's going on, still supporting Ukraine, still supporting Hollywood, still supporting Disney, still supporting fake people, liars that hate you and use you, spitefully using you, still supporting it. What is the definition of insanity? To keep doing the same thing and expect something's going to happen. All I have to say to America is this: what you will allow will continue. We have the government we deserve. How engaged are you? Do you know what they're doing in your county? Are you sure they're not coming to do more damage, to take more of your freedoms away? I hope that you are engaged for your children's sake or for our future. These people are going to be wiping your ass in the future, you know what I'm saying? You might want to make sure that we are invested, that we know what's going on. So many people are so engaged in just entertaining theirself, America, while people are whistleblowing, literally dying, literally being persecuted, mocked in this crazy silent war. They better not. I bet they were giving it out here after it wasn't approved at the college, at the junior college, while they had the all age drag show. They had a booth over there. I mean, I'm telling you, these people in Humboldt County, until you stop them in your community, I know I've got things to do. I've got a lot of work to do. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot of people to take aim at. It's a lot to think. I'm one person. What can I do? A lot. A lot. You can do a lot. So, I love y'all so much. I may be back on this weekend to do a rant stream later. Who knows? Seems like I could feel one welling up inside. You know what I mean? Oh, I love you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Devil Dog, for this study. I mean, it's fantastic. It's blowing my socks off. I really enjoy it. I hope everyone's enjoying it. You know, to fill your mind with information, history, music, good stuff. Right now's culture is just like dead. There's nothing to enrich your mind, body, or soul in today's culture. Music. The synthesizer music, that's not real music. You know, there's so much. I'll rant on later with you. Maybe we could have you up. Not on these. I want to keep these short and sweet so people will watch them. So thank you so much for all your support. NC Dubs, it's so good to see you. Mwah. Love y'all. I'll see you soon, I'm sure.